This week on Christian World News, President Trump steps up for Iraq's Christians, signing into law a measure to help victims of ISIS atrocities and helping faith-based groups care for their needs.
Plus, why is Asia Bibi still in Pakistan? We talked to her attorney to find out when she can finally breathe free.
And Canada's identity crisis, how a radical national experiment is changing the nature of this once Christian nation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
Good to have you back, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Well, President Trump is taking strong action to help Christians and other targets of genocide in the Middle East. The Islamic ISIS army that terrorized religious and ethnic minorities is largely defeated, but its victims remain. ISIS murdered hundreds of thousands of Yazidis, Shiite Muslims, and Christians during its 4-year rule of parts of Syria and Iraq. Millions of victims are now refugees in the Middle East and Europe. Others are returning home to find their villages, their homes, and their churches destroyed. This week, the president signed a law to help them.
This bill continues my administration's efforts to direct U.S. assistance toward persecuted communities, including through faith-based programs. It also allows the government agencies to assist a range of entities in investigating and prosecuting ISIS's despicable acts, and they are very despicable indeed. Today, we honor the memory of all those killed by ISIS in Syria and Iraq, and we renew our sacred commitment to religious freedom.
Many faith-based agencies, agencies are at work helping the victims of genocide, but up to this point, they have had to rely almost entirely on private donations.
Wendy, Jalil Dawood, he grew up in a Christian family in Baghdad, Iraq, but persecution and war led him to flee back in 1982. Today, he leads the Arabic Church of Dallas. He is also the founder of World Refugee Care, which works to bring hope and healing to refugees in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. He joins us now by Skype. Jalil, great to have you on the broadcast. Sir, let me begin with this. Why do you think this law that the president signed is so important?
Thank you for having me. God bless you all. It is important because there is two equations to the formula here. One is domestic, one is the refugee who left already. So this will deal with the people who are inside. It will give them protection that they can live in peace and be able to sustain themselves while they are inside. So this will be a great step toward that. And the people outside, that's another formula that I'm praying for, that we will be able to help those who already left. There's people who are in neighboring nations, 5 to 10 years waiting, and we are praying for them as well.
Jalil, tell us about the suffering of Christians and other minorities in Iraq and Syria. How are they doing?
They're really struggling financially. They're struggling to start life. They are struggling with pressures, persecution. And, the bill includes the Shiite. The Shiite can go back to his nation, to his people, and which is massive and a lot of people. But the Christians, they have nowhere to go, and they need help, and they need hope, and they need people to stand with them at this time. So this is a great thing, great start. It is a $300 million toward infrastructure, basically, mainly. Yeah. But it is something that is wonderful to start with, that a president of the greatest nation on earth will stand with them, and that's a great thing.
And do you see an opportunity for the church in this situation?
The church here, or I'm sorry, are you
both in the United States and also there in the Middle East?
Well, that's the thing. The help need to be distributed fairly to all denominations, to all aspects, and to use this fund to help people stand and live and, survive. And we as an organization, we're trying to do that. This Christmas, we're doing program for orphans and for internally, displaced people, that we might give them hope. We need to stand with them because we could have been in that situation ourselves. So America's standing with them now, and we pray that it will be more in a positive way if we want them to stay there and be light and salt among others.
Yeah, and to that point, Jalil, talk about that. Can the church in the Middle East make a comeback?
Nothing is impossible to the Lord, as this is a Christmas time, and we remember the story of Christmas and how the Lord create things that do not exist. So our prayer is we would have presence there, but the people who left, they need to be helped as well to get somewhere. So it's a two-headed monster that we need to pray about, support, and stand with, and see what the Lord how he works with the people there, and stand with them.
Jalil, last question. What can our viewers do to help you, folks like yourself, doing great work on the ground, and others in the region trying to help out?
Blessings to you and to the church in America. We are blessed here. First, I want to say we are blessed. We are thankful to the Lord that he loves us. He gave us so many blessings, and we are to share that blessings. And World Refugee Care, we are we're trying to sponsor family, to feed those refugees' family in the neighboring countries. They struggle with the survival. They struggle with persecution outside even Iraq. And so we need to influence the government to protect those minorities inside and outside. And also we need to help them in a material way, in a substantial way, in a way that they can survive and say, we are not left behind, and nobody cares about us, but we are to care about them, love them, and show care.
That's right. That is an important point. We have to leave it there. Jalil Dawood, sir, thank you so much for all that you do for the kingdom. Thanks for coming on the show.
Bless you. Thank you.
Wendy?
War has marred the Middle East for centuries. It's even affected some of the most famous sites in the Holy Land. This week, Israel announced it's cleared more than 1,500 landmines near a site revered as the baptism of Jesus. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us that story.
This is Qasr al-Yahud on the Jordan River, the place many believe John baptized Jesus. It's also thought to be the area the children of Israel crossed over to the Promised Land and the site where Elijah ascended to heaven. Israel's side of the baptismal site opened to visitors in 2011, but the 250-acre area around it, known as the land of the monasteries, remained off limits. This area is strewn with mines and other explosive devices remaining from the Six-Day War and beyond. Because of security concerns, the area was marked and fenced, and access to the church's properties has been restricted since the 1970s.
We are working here almost 1 year. In this monastery, we work here 3 months. It takes us time to clean the area, clean from mines, clean from motors, clean for booby traps.
7 churches have property here. 3 monasteries have already been cleaned, and CBN News toured 2 of them. The Franciscan chapel was built in 1956 and belongs to the Vatican. The Ethiopian monastery was much larger and had a bakery and guest house.
Every millimeter of this site is checked at least by 3 people and by 2 different actions. So, as you understand, it's very dangerous and difficult job.
Marcel Aviv leads the Israeli agency responsible for this type of operation. It's working with Hallow Trust, the world's oldest and largest humanitarian mine clearance charity, to clean this area.
When we will finish all the job here, those lands will be given to their owners, and the owners are the churches.
During the Six-Day War, this church-owned land came under Israeli control. It became an easy target for the Palestine Liberation Organization to attack Israeli soldiers. Eventually, the monks abandoned the area and explosives were spread all around. Israel has maps of the mines, but according to Supervisor Moshe Hillman, many have shifted over the years, and there are other challenges.
And it was here full of metal. It was a firing zone, it was an irrigation zone. Monks have a small farm in this monastery, so it takes us time to clean.
Some 800,000 people visit the baptismal site each year, and that's expected to triple once the monasteries are back.
I hope that this garden that was left 50 years ago will be green again, and all of us will be happy to visit here and to see this amazing area. I hope and it will be, and I'm sure that it will be.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Qasr al-Yahud, the Jordan Valley.
Coming up, from Asia to Europe to Africa, our George Thomas has been on the move. He tells us what's happening with the church around the globe. Stay tuned.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless His people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledged that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphan's Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
And welcome back to Christian World News. George, you have just returned literally from a trip around the world.
Yeah, it's been epic.
Where have your travels taken you?
Well, when it started in Southeast Asia, I went to China, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea. The highlight was Vietnam. It was my first trip to Vietnam. Looked at the church, looked at the challenges the church is facing there. Then I went all the way across the 2 oceans to Africa, profiled the story of an American missionary who survived Ebola and is now back in Liberia serving the people of Liberia.
So then your next stop was
Yes.
Europe. You actually visited a church there that has been holding 24-hour prayer services since October.
Yes, that's
Tell us
right.
about that.
Yeah, for almost 10 weeks. It's been unbelievable. Pretty much down the sleepy road. It's in a residential community on the outskirts of The Hague in the Dutch capital. It's a church that it's called the Bethel Church. And about 10 weeks ago, the Tamarazians, they are an Armenian family of 4. They had been in the Netherlands for 9 years trying to seek political asylum. You see the family there. And they've been waiting for 9 years. And then suddenly the Dutch government said, no, we are going to deport you. And so they decided to walk into the Bethel Church and seek refuge. Well, the Bethel Church officials, they decided to go back to basically the Middle Ages to find an archaic law that says no police officer or no government official can enter the church while the church is holding a service. So,
Wow.
Wendy, for the last 10 weeks, pretty much every day, 24 hours a day, people will come from around the country, around the world. And I spoke to a leader there who talked about the impact this has had on the church and the community. Take a listen.
We got an enormous support just because we are starting the church asylum here. A lot of pastors are supporting now, more than 550. I think it's even now 580 pastors all over the country went to The Hague to support our service, to participate in it, to celebrate. And thousands of people are coming to the services. So the church is standing up for them, and I think that's a way to follow the gospel. That's a way of being a follower of Jesus Christ.
George, how long will these services
They're
go?
going to keep going until they find a resolution for the family.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you also had a chance to visit with the lawyer of Christian Asia Bibi, the
That's
Pakistani
right.
Christian who was in prison for many, many years.
Yes.
How's he doing?
You know, he escaped right after he got his client out of prison. And we had a chance to meet him at an undisclosed location. And he is, you know, his whole life has been turned upside down. And I asked him, did he have any regrets for taking up the case of Asia Bibi? Remember, he is a Muslim defending a Christian. And here's what he said.
I'll never have a normal life like I used. I will always be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life because I know there are radical Muslim fanatics who want me dead. But what gives me strength and encouragement is the response I've had from Christians around the world. Since the day I left Pakistan, so many Christians, even small children, young people, and even the elderly, some of whom run to me and hug me and kiss my hand, and they call me their hero. This is very encouraging to me. It reminds me that taking on Asia Bibi's case was the right thing to do, despite the consequences.
Amazing you were able to meet with him.
Yeah, and his whole life has been turned upside down, as I mentioned. All eyes now is on Asia Bibi. When is she going to get out? My understanding is that pretty much perhaps the nation of Canada, we have a story on Canada here in a second, but perhaps the nation of Canada will give her the asylum and the protection that she needs.
Oh, we hope so. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, George.
You're welcome.
Fascinating journey.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, whoa, Canada, America's neighbor to the north, is undergoing some radical, even dangerous changes. Stay tuned.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
We had 4 jobs that didn't go right. But, you know, we didn't waver in our faith.
That's when God put on my heart that we needed to do the well.
Within a couple of days, we got an insurance refund check that we had no idea was coming.
And here we are, you know, this year, it's just boom.
You go out and help other people and you get rewarded for it.
Get Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Miraculous Blessings.
And welcome back to Christian World News. Canada has a reputation as one of the nicest countries in the world, but some fear that this once Christian nation is having an identity crisis.
Slightly. Yes. Canada has embarked on a radical national experiment with profound changes that could lead down a dangerous road. Our Dale Hurd has the story.
When Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his country is a post-national state and has no core identity, no one should be surprised when some start asking if Canada is even a country. But the identity crisis facing Canada is not only multifaceted, it's serious and could one day have a direct impact on the United States. Canada is in the midst of, as one writer put it, a civilizational experiment that's transforming a Western nation into a post-Western nation. And this revolution is centered around the cult of diversity.
Your Canada.
Here's one version of Justin Trudeau's post-national, post-Western Canada, transformed by diversity.
Oh, Canada, you stand for everybody.
The question is not whether Canada should welcome immigrants. The question, according to Toronto Sun columnist and SiriusXM Canada host Anthony Furey, is whose values should win the day.
In Canada right now, it's labeled bizarrely xenophobic and anti-immigrant, and they throw around terms like racism to no end. If you simply say, I'd like us all to integrate here and live together in a compatible way.
Throughout their histories, both Canada and America have welcomed immigrants of all backgrounds. But Canada, rather than being a melting pot like the U.S., has said that it is a mosaic of many cultures. The problem begins when the Canadian mosaic includes more and more radical Islamists who favor undemocratic values under Sharia law. Prime Minister Trudeau welcomed almost 50,000 refugees from the Middle East in 2016 alone, and has even welcomed returning ISIS fighters, saying in an interview that they could be a powerful voice.
And a lot of people, probably the silent majority, are saying, I'm unhappy with this, including new immigrants who came to Canada, whether it's a year ago or a decade or 3 decades ago, who say, no, I came to Canada for a reason, because I wanted Canadian values and I was escaping values in other countries.
One immigrant who would like more Canadian values is pro-Western Muslim Tahir Gora, founder of Tag TV in Toronto, a network with a large international audience. He's also a co-author of Submission, The Danger of Political Islam to Canada, with a warning to America.
I moved to this beautiful country because of its Canadian culture. People like me escaped Pakistan or Middle East or the Muslim world, came to Canada, and some went to United States with the hope that they will be left alone by those radical Islamists. But now we see those Islamists roaming around in this part of the world.
Tariq Fatah is a journalist, writer, and founder of the Muslim Canadian Congress. An immigrant from Pakistan and a proud Canadian, Fatah says the Canadian left, which in his words is sinking in white guilt, now accepts and even celebrates undemocratic radical Islamic beliefs and practices. He likens it to a circus.
It considers radical Islam as a phenomena that needs to be embraced because it is so curious. So we as Muslims are considered as circus animals. We need to perform in a way. And the white left liberal feminist class would sit in ringside seats and say, how lovely. Just look at that monkey jump up and down. Or that elephant stood up on his 2 feet. Honey, did you see that? Oh, it's breathtaking.
Another facet of Canada's identity crisis can be seen in the growing trend of what are called land acknowledgements.
We want to begin by acknowledging the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples on which Wilfrid Laurier University's campuses sit.
Land acknowledgements are recited daily on campuses and in schools across Canada, and they essentially declare that Canada is an occupier.
We respectfully acknowledge the territory
in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk and the island of Newfoundland,
as the ancestral homelands
of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk.
These continue even though a poll this year found that most Canadians do not believe Native peoples should have a special status and that the government should stop apologizing for past wrongs. The culture that is under fire here is traditional Canadian Christian culture. Ottawa resident Alexandra Belair grew up behind the Iron Curtain in communist Czechoslovakia, and she sees some disturbing parallels between life under communism and life in politically correct Canada.
What do you say to someone who says, that's preposterous, I can say whatever I want in Canada? How can you compare it to the Soviet world?
But you can't say anything you want. Because I was a daughter of a political dissident, teachers would take the time to berate me and say bad things about me in front of the whole classroom, because that way they were proving they weren't showing favoritism to the dissident's daughter, right? Now my friend's daughter was in school and she was being shamed for being too Christian. How's that different? How is that different? She was being shamed for feeling very patriotic Canadian. How is that different from being shamed for being a dissident's daughter?
There's a saying here that the world needs more Canada. But if current trends continue, the world is going to get less of Canada, as Canadian identity is swallowed up in a left-wing multicultural experiment. Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Toronto and Ottawa.
To see more great stories like this, just check out our webpage. Find it at cbnnews.com. We'll be back right after this.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphan's Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Finally, this week, Pope Francis wants to change the wording of one verse in the Lord's Prayer. The London Daily Express reports he believes the most recent translation research on Matthew 6:13, which indicates the English version of that passage, is incorrect. It reads, "And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." The researchers who have studied it for 16 years say it would be better translated as, "Abandon us not when in temptation," for the first half of the verse. Arguing his point, the Pope said, "A father doesn't do that. A father helps you to get up immediately." Francis said of the line in question, "It's Satan who leads us into temptation. That's his department."
Interesting.
Good point, huh?
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, folks, that is it for this week's edition of Christian World News. Thank you so much for joining us.
Until next week, from all of us here, goodbye and God bless you.